In French, we say l'union fait la force, If you work together, you're going to be much stronger. The very positive aspect of the C20 is that they represent just about every aspect of life.
The G20 understands that you have to engage with civil society. They're increasingly aware that they've got to go back to civil society and justify why they've done things in particular ways.
Just imagine this. What would an economy look like if it gave equal weight to economics, people, and the environment? That's what civil society needs to cohere, to champion, to promote, and to enliven our networks of billions of people around the world and be the leaders of that change that's needed.
The G20 only has legitimacy insofar as what it decides impacts on citizens in a positive way. When it doesn't take decisions and greater wealth inequality blows out, citizens are hurt and the G20 has failed. When it doesn't deal with global issues, at least have a conversation about them, like climate change and pollution, then it's failing leadership.
The G20, where the wealth of the world is primarily, also have to decide on the kind of world that they want to live in and what they want their children to live in.
It's clear to me that inequality is both the defining issue of the C20 Summit and the defining feature of our time. We have everyone from Pope Francis, President Obama, the head of the IMF, the World Economic Forum, for different reasons, saying that we need to work to address inequality.
It's not sufficient just to have growing economies. The benefits of that growth have to be distributed back down to the poorest people.
Modern governments cannot achieve their objectives without working with the enormous range of groups represented by civil society.
Governments are there to manage the public good. They're there to manage on behalf of the people.
It's critical to have involvement of the non-government sector, civil society, in talking about how our economy should develop. The reason that we all want strong economies is so that we can deliver for our citizens. So our economic growth has to be strong, but it also has to be inclusive. Hearing from civil society helps us make sure that growth is inclusive.
You don't have to have a title. You don't have to have a huge income. All you have to have is a thought, a point of view, and you're part of this discussion.
Governments, particularly democratic ones, know that they can't ask their communities for sacrifice if there's no trust. This is why civil society representing the C20 is now part of the process, saying we can help you with that trust deficit. We can be the interpreters for you of why these policies, if you take them and brave stands, are good for people. And that gives you room to move and to do the right thing.
Some problems are too big for any one country on its own to solve. And some of those problems have been identified by the C20. Climate change is one of them. Governance and transparency is another, where we want to see international cooperation.
Because there is no doubt that corruption affects, the whole structure of society. Either you're talking about health, you're talking about education. So this is not only also the national problem, this is the world problem.
It is a global issue because a lot of the money that is stolen from the poorer countries is found in our banks.
With such leakage in the revenue cycle, you cannot build capable states, you cannot build a social system that is cohesive and sustainable.
I think the rich countries having to sit in the G20 with the poor countries is a far better international mechanism to advance the equity question, the inequality question, to really put it on the table.
The Pacific, we have a lot of small island developing states which have very unique vulnerabilities, especially the impact on climate change. A lot of our countries face an existential threat. We're scattered around the Pacific Ocean. Some of our countries are only 3 meters high from sea level, and they're facing rising sea level. So it's important that the G20 recognizes our special grouping.
I'm an optimist. And I believe that many governments who are part of the G20 have come to the conclusion that you cannot just be on a road by yourself.
Well, my real hope is that the C20 helps the G20 leaders identify some very measurable goals and then holds them to those goals.
We need to demonstrate that we're adding value to the G20 process, and I believe that we are, and we need to demonstrate that we're bringing the issues from across the world to the G20, and the Civil 20 is a good way of doing that.
Let's make sure that we not only identify the problems, but recommend some specific actions that, if taken, will make a difference.
The messages are pretty clear from civil society that if you want legitimacy and to be able to say you really are leading in a way that we expect, here are the issues. They're now over to you. Civil society has spoken.